Hey guys, we are back. My name is Cassie, if you missed our first video. We are going to be just exploring some current events, different topics and things, just kind of generally sharing opinions. And then we also invite you to share your opinions in the comments. Also, we have Crystal.
Hello everyone. I do want to explain that I didn't last week. My whole part of the game, other than the conversation keeper as well, is to kind of play the background here. I'm playing a different game called Hegemony Rome, The Rise of Caesar, which is a real-time strategy game. And this is just for entertainment. While we're talking, you guys can have something to watch and something to look at during that time. I will let you know I have not played this game for more than a minute. I'm already addicted to it. So if you do get opportunity, I highly suggest looking into the game, as well as the people that made this game are a completely independent viewer type thing. I met the guys that made this game back in Gen Con back in 2011, I believe, and I was just fascinated by them. So this is just purely for your aspect. I do have the tutorials on, so that we don't have to worry about me not knowing what I'm doing and failing too soon. So I hope you really enjoy the game as well as the conversation tonight.
Definitely, and it's going to be kind of an interesting night. Um, Obviously, one of the major headlines that has been going around lately is the trouble that's been going on in Ferguson, especially as we await any sort of ruling based on it. There's been an explosion basically in the city, and it's kind of unsettling to think that so much the effects of one situation, one unfortunate incident, can cause quite so much stir, especially when it's not yet been decided about the situation. So it's really kind of brought a lot of people's attention to it. So that's the topic that we're going to be exploring. And Crystal, this is really close to you. I'm sure you've probably heard of a lot more and probably even felt the ripples in where you're at.
In all honesty, I live about a half an hour away from Ferguson on the Illinois side, and part of where I live, when it first happened, um, they actually held protest in one of my home cities. And the fact that it was close to home made me really keep track of it. And like you said, it is close to home. But, the fact of it is, for me, that it doesn't even have to be close to home for me to recognize something like this. And I have very strong feelings towards this. And it's going to be kind of one of those things for me where it's going to be very hard for me to keep myself civil because of the way that I feel about this. And the fact of the matter is, I feel very different about this than most people do, and I really hope to put my opinion out there because of the fact that I live so close there. I know the areas that these people are talking about, and I know the different crime rate that happens there. So in general, I it's kind of a very strong topic for me. I do have to say that.
Yeah, it's something that I would have. Um, Honestly, I heard a little bit about it when it first happened. I've heard brief snippets here and there as there were some major attacks and violence that have spread through it. But it's definitely become a little bit more of an eye catcher as things really come to a head with the investigation and the court's decision here. And it's very disturbing to me to see a city that has a lot of people in it, a lot of good people in it, and just completely torn apart by this. I mean, there have been cities in the past who have had these kind of situations, and they never really rebuild to be the same thing again. Detroit is one of the most famous examples. They had a ton of racial issues there, and it's almost abandoned now. You don't really see even a remote percent of the population living there and wanting to be there anymore. It's a ghost town, and I really don't want to see that kind of a situation occur here. I mean, we need to learn to live and work together. we all just want, the situation to kind of quell down. I don't understand quite why the violence and the protests and everything have really gotten to this level. I there's been previous situations in which an officer's reactions have been put into question, and I've never heard of it getting this insanely. Uh,
Well,
I don't want to use the word that they're blowing it out of proportion. I agree that it's something to be considered, but I don't understand how what they've done in response is actually helping the situation.
that's my opinion because, in all honesty, we did see this with Zimmerman as well, George Zimmerman and Trayvon Martin. We saw where a bunch of people got into an uproar when we didn't even know what had actually happened. And, it did turn out that George Zimmerman, did something that he should not have done. However, we also have to understand that with what happened with Michael Brown this time around, um, there are so many conflicting ways of telling the story right now that we really should not be making assumptions until the fact that we know what's going on. And unfortunately, that's the way the grand jury has to look at it right now, is what decision do we make based off of evidence that we can find.
Right.
And one thing that's really disturbing me is the fact that people in um I apologize, people in Ferguson have said already, we're going to have civil disobedience if our verdict does not come correctly, which means that if they don't get what they want, then they're going to be uncivil about it. And the thing that disturbs me about that is because of the fact that right off the bat, you can see that that should not be the way the justice system works.
Yeah.
And the fact that they're trying to make the justice system work that way very much disturbs me because one of the biggest issues we have with our entire country is the fact that our judicial system and our executive branches, all the different forms of government, are starting to crumble under what people want. And that's not what we should be doing because we have millions of people that live in this country. And because of that, we because of that, we find that we're having so many different issues because people have conflicting ones.
Yeah. And I and honestly, to me, it's one of those things that I grant you the Trayvon Martin situation is in some ways very, very different, but in other ways it's very much the same. But there have been other killings that have been thrown into question, and most notably some of the deaths of young white males, especially, that are never even considered, never make national headlines. And I'm wondering, is it really that it's an issue with a policeman that might have overstepped his bounds or might have reacted in a way that was, more force than necessary to contain the situation? Or is it more of a situation where we feel as a society or as a group of people that we are being wronged or we are being treated poorly by others, other races, other individuals, other religions, whatever the situation may be? Is it really becoming about a justice system, or is it really just becoming about I need to, defend my clan, defend my group, defend my people, and I don't care whose the rights I trod on.
And that's really a problem for me as well as the fact that we have an issue in us that we're finding race is something completely different than what we should be thinking of it in this day and age. I mean, even Morgan Freeman said a very good quote that I quote very often. He was asked by a reporter, how do you feel about racism today? And Morgan Freeman's response was, if we stop talking about it, then it will go away. Whereas if we keep talking about it, it's just going to get worse and worse. And I completely agree with that because of the fact that the more you talk about it, like feminism and race and sexism, just different things like that, the more we talk about those things, the more they're going to be there. I personally, I live in an area with a very diverse race and a very diverse culture. So no matter who I look at, they're a human being to me. They're not a person of color. They're not a person of different cultures. They're a person. So to me, it's kind of hard to understand why people focus so much on different races and sexes when really we just need to be focusing on the good of humanity.
Yeah, and I mean, even if Officer Wilson did overstep his bounds, I think it's gone way above and beyond that, and it's gone into the degree that it's like it no longer really matters whether he did it or he didn't do it, or he, did it correctly or did it, as a defense mechanism, or did it within due process of his, abilities as a police officer to contain a situation. It's become more about, well, if it goes against Michael Brown, it's not just going against one person or one person's action. It's going against an entire community or an entire group, and it never should have been about that. I one person's guilt or innocence should not define an entire community or an entire people. I mean, it's almost like blaming the entire race of Chinese people that were having economy issues, or blaming the entire the Jews, for instance, in the Holocaust. They were blamed for having all this extra wealth and everything when Germany was struggling to make ends meet. Most Germans didn't have the same level of economic status, and they just started to blame whoever was there to point the finger at. And I don't. It's almost like they want that, though. They want the entire community to feel the effects of what one person did. And I don't, whether he was right or wrong in what he was doing, or whether he was a good kid or a bad kid, it shouldn't reflect on the entire community of Ferguson, or the entire race of Ferguson. It shouldn't be about an entire community. It was his choices and Officer Wilson's choices that happened that night. Those two individuals, that's it.
And my curiosity is why it escalated that way in the first place. The Ferguson Police Department took the right action in the situation. They took the officer. He wasn't in custody, but they did know his whereabouts. That he was constantly under surveillance, and they immediately started doing the autopsies and everything correctly. So my question is, why did it ever take protest and literally looting? They literally destroyed their own city for this. So why was it that important when we didn't even have all the details?
Very much so. And I don't understand how rioting and looting and destroying a community is any way going to get justice or make peace for Michael. I mean, what's happened has happened. I don't understand where people are all up in arms about it. And it's like, whether anybody, nothing that the court can say can bring him back. And my fullest sympathies to his family. That's a terrible situation. I would never want to lose a kid, regardless of what the situation was. If he was right or in the wrong, that is a terrible thing. But it's not going to make anything better. It's not going to help that family to watch, rioting and looting and more murders happen. That's not going to bring him back. That's not going to fix the situation. Unfortunately, it's done. What's done is done. There's no bringing him back. No matter what the courts say, it's done.
Right. And even if the officer is convicted, then he'll go to jail and he will serve a prison statement just like anyone else. Even though he was an officer, he is still a human being and therefore should be treated the same exact way as what anyone else would be. And the fact
Exactly.
that people are wanting him treated differently just for the sake of he was an officer disturbs me again, because of the fact that's not the way the justice system works. even if the President of the United States, if he goes out and kills someone in cold blood, he is going to be charged for it just the same as everyone else. So our justice system needs to be inside of the justice system. We need to stop requesting that different things happen when in reality the things that are best for us are actually happening. And we have to
Very
come to
much.
terms with that too.
And what really bothers me about the situation as it stands right now is the fact that, you know, Officer Wilson has to live with what happened. Whether he was right or wrong, he has to live with what happened. He has to live with whatever justice the court hands down to him, but he will never be able to serve an active duty again in that city. He will have death threats hanging over his head on a daily basis. His family are getting death threats. He's got, anyone that's close to him, anyone that knows him has probably, really honestly made him an isolated individual because it's dangerous to even associate with him. That's terrible. I can't believe that they would go to such lengths to ruin not only his life, but the life of his family for the sake of we want our justice. We want our version of justice. How is that right? I mean, is it right that we would sit there and say, well, because, your dad committed a sin, we're going to drag the son out and beat him? That's almost martial law. That's biblical law. That's Old Testament. That's not today. That's not modern society. We have an understanding as a culture, or at least I thought, we had an understanding as a culture that the sins of a parent or the sins of a child do not necessarily reflect on the other, or the sins of a brother, another family member, a distant relative. That doesn't necessarily reflect on them. Just because, my sister might go out and do something goofy does not mean that I necessarily agree or I hold the same values as her. I should not be scared for my life if my sister was the one that was getting persecuted like this. I shouldn't be the one that would be scared to walk out my front door or go to the grocery store or, take my kids to school. That's ridiculous.
And I can say that on regards of what's happening right now, it is kind of scary for me to understand that um my family might be in danger soon. Just because of an accident that happened, whether it be an accident or not. And it's not for me to say whether it was or not. But in regards to that, we really need to understand that, things have happened. It is past. It's been 3 months now. And like you said, that nothing we do is going to help the mother and father. And as a parent myself, I can say that I would be devastated myself if my child were in an incident like this. I would be very much upset and I would probably do something stupid. But for the sake of an entire city doing something as stupid as what has been happening lately, we have to understand that there's no way that this should be happening whatsoever.
Mm-mm.
There's
I don't.
no reason for it.
No, there's no excuse for that. I mean, it's really saddening to see that there's people out there that are so narrow-minded and almost have a tunnel vision of, well, we need to make a stand and we need to, prove that we're right because we've got, the protests or the guns or whatever it is that they want to use in their methods, including, unfortunately, lately, a lot of Twitter posts, offering rewards for pictures and information on family members of Officer Wilson. And whatever method of, threats and fear and violence and whatever you do, are you doing it because you actually care about, Michael Brown and his family, or are you doing it out of a sense of you have to be the one heard? You have to be the side that takes the upper stand. Is it really about a sense of I want to help our community get back together, or is it more, let me wave my flag from the hilltop as our city lies in ruins? And that's
Right.
really what it is.
And my concern is, again, it doesn't look like they're protesting something. I mean, there are people out there that are protesting, but the fact of destroying your own city over conflicts like this, when all the facts have not come out yet, um, that's really disturbing to me. And then the fact that you're already practicing protesting for a verdict that has not even come out yet, that is very unsettling to me as well. I've read articles that have said literally that people are practicing looting and protesting over the fact that this is happening. And I'm just sitting here like, how do you practice protesting over something? How?
And that's totally right. How? I don't know if they're just so focused on that they've totally lost sight of, you know, the the values and the laws that our country is run under. And I mean, I'm sorry if you don't like a court's decision, but the courts are there to see that there is a level of fairness on both sides, that both sides get heard and both sides can bring forth evidence and testimony to, have their case or have their, voices at least heard. We don't just automatically throw someone in a detention cell just because we don't like them, or just because we don't like their kids, or just because we don't like their family. We don't treat people like subhuman just because we don't necessarily agree with the choices that were made when they were made. That's not how we run.
Right. And everybody is entitled to a fair hearing. And at this point in time, all Officer Brown has had is literally death threats and bad stuff happening to him. And that's a very uneducated way of saying that is bad stuff. But imagine how you would feel if you were under the impression you were doing your job and then all of a sudden people were wanting to burn you at the stake. Is that not what happens at like the Salem witch trials?
Very
Nobody
much so.
nobody knew exactly what was going on, so out of nowhere people started requesting all kinds of silly stuff. And to me that is the uneducated way of doing things to me.
Yeah. And I mean, I totally agree that you have a right to voice your opinion. But unfortunately, for some people, they're taking it above and beyond voicing an opinion, and they're getting, either extremely violently vocal, they're doing threats. One teacher was fired because of a poor choice in Twitter post that basically, amounted to a lot of swearing and a very uneducated way of looking at the situation. And as a teacher, especially, no parent wants to see a child's teacher speak like that on Twitter. That is not the kind of, not the kind of professional behavior I would want to see out of a teacher. And that's certainly not the kind of behavior that most parents would want to see. But she let her feelings come out in such a way that has now cost her job. How many other jobs, how many other people's, workplaces, especially in Ferguson, where there have been so many, riots and protests and all sorts of crazy stuff happening. How many jobs have been lost? How many, people have had to, close businesses for no other reason than it's safer to have your doors shut than open right now? Is it really fair to the people that are, getting hurt by this, not because they're unfortunately indirectly involved because they live there or because they have an opinion on the subject? It
Right.
just it seems overblown to me that they're going such great lengths to state an opinion, and it honestly it has a very poor look on the side of, an outsider looking in. How would someone, over in Europe look at us right now? How would someone over in China look at us right now? What would they be thinking as they look at this, crazy amount of, riots and yelling and screaming and threats? Well, I mean, honestly, they're looking over at us going, and you want to come over here and tell me how to run my country? You can't even get your own citizens under control.
And exactly, not only that, but we also have to be under the impression that when we do look at other countries, they already have a bad outlook of the United States. We have one of the lowest approval ratings in the world. Nobody likes us.
No,
And I know,
nobody. And very true. Very, very true.
and it doesn't really matter that nobody likes us, because we have to understand we have to take care of our stuff before anything else. But like you said, we try to go over and tell other people how to run their countries. Are you joking me? Seriously? We can't even run our own country. There are more homeless people in the United States than, or I apologize, wrong way. There are more abandoned buildings in the United States than there are homeless people. Why?
Yeah.
Why are we not taking care of our own citizens? Why are we not taking care of our people?
Exactly. In fact, one of the more recent cases of a situation that was police brutality was a white homeless man who had schizophrenia, who was literally beaten until he ended up in a hospital where he died several days later of his injuries. And he was a 37-year-old white homeless man whose name probably never even really struck into the most of the minds of Americans. But same situation in a lot of ways, that someone was possibly very unjustly treated. Definitely there was a mental situation there where the guy didn't really grasp what the officer was telling him to do, and he reacted as best as he could, but he was treated with an extreme brutality situation that no one really seemed to notice. I don't remember hearing about this in the news. It was never really brought up or anything, but it happened. No one rioted over it. No one looted over it. No one, threatens violence if the courts didn't prosecute this officer. Nothing happened.
And that is really one of the saddest parts, is because there is cases of police brutality all over the United States. Our justice system is corrupt, and all of us can agree with that we are very, very much corrupt. However, we also have to understand we're looking in the wrong places. In the case of Michael Brown, unfortunately, the evidence is towards that Michael Brown was not in the best of senses when all of this happened. There was a toxicology that he was under the influence of an illegal drug. There is evidence that he, wasn't all where he should have been at the time. There is evidence that he was reaching towards the gun at the time that he was shot. All kinds of different things. So my opinion would be that the police officer was probably thinking he was doing his job, even if he overreacted at the time.
And even if he did overreact, I mean, how much of an overreaction? It's not necessarily that he was even attempting that. Scuffles in a car are, unfortunately, you have limited movability, you have limited reaction time, you have limited time to really think about what you're doing. It happens. I'm sure we've all been in situations where, one person zigs, you zag, you collide in the hallway, you drop something, something happens. And it's not necessarily that any one of you are at fault, it just happened. People don't exactly react and are able to see exactly what their reaction is going to cause. I don't necessarily I don't really lean towards one side or the other. I mean, I think that there is just as much room for Officer Wilson to have been guilty, and he knew what he was doing, and he reacted intentionally with too much violence, just as much as I think that there's a situation here where he was just trying to defend himself, or it was an accident. It was never intentional. Do I think what Michael Brown was doing at the time was deserving of a death sentence? Absolutely not. I do not think he deserved to die. I think he was a kid in the wrong place at the wrong time under the wrong influences. But at the same time, I can't say for sure that there wasn't a situation there that has been massively over proportionally blown up by a city that is in wrestling with itself, that I don't think either of them would have wanted to happen. As much as, they might not have been, best buddies or best friends at the time, I don't think either one of them want to see Ferguson completely torn apart by what's going on right now.
Right, and like you said, we don't know what actually happened. There's no video evidence of it. There's only hearsay at this point, which is, of course, we have to understand admissible in court. We cannot go off of hearsay right now. But the fact that it did happen, it was not deserving of a death sentence. But we also have to understand that we all make mistakes as humans. And we don't want things like this to happen and be a mistake, but unfortunately it does happen. So the fact that we're ruining this man's life by putting this much focus on probably an accident, it is just disturbing. And it's the fact that we keep harping over it month after month after month that's really starting to bother me, because there's all kinds of things going on. I really believe that all of us are overreacting. Even me and you talking about it in general is putting focus on it. But we have to understand that the focus that we put on it between the news media and the looters and the protesting is just all negative. This is not helping anyone get to the right justice. And
Very much so.
justice in this case will not be had. We can all agree with that, because the very moves that they made to try and help justice become will create it to where if something did happen, justice will not happen. Because of the way people overreacted to the situation, there is no way that any type of justice will happen in the case that he did do something wrong. I
Yeah.
mean, they just made it worse.
And this is one of the things that I was taught even as a kid. My mom had this way of, she watched me and my siblings just quite literally. When one would poke me, I would tap her pretty hard, and then she'd smack me, and then I'd land the punches. And one of the things that I my mom started doing was basically saying, well, if it already escalated to the point where you're smacking each other, justice has obviously been served. I can't do anything to punish you. It's already been done. There was wrong done on both sides. You've now both done things to each other that are wrong, so either I punish both of you or you let it go. And that's unfortunately, it's like we get into this tit for tat thing, and it's like, we now there's wrong done on both sides. Whether or not we like to think that, whoever was right in the situation that happened, now there's been wrong on both sides, where both people who have both opinions have now done things that are cruel, threats, violence, and escalating the situation to well beyond the proportions that it should have been at initially.
Right. And that's the real get to it, if you really want to look at it, is that between news media, the protest, looting, all of that, they've just made it so much worse than it needed to be. Rather than waiting for the police to try and take care of it themselves, they created a situation where it is impossible to actually take care of it in the proper manner.
Yeah.
And it, I'm not saying that if the, you know, I forget what it's called, the jury, um, they'll, based on evidence, they will do what they believe is right. And of course, there's probably going to be, I'm lost for words now. I can't think of the words. But there's going to be all kinds of things. We have to realize the grand jury is not going to stop at this. It's not going to stop at the grand jury saying, yes, he's guilty, or no, he's innocent. It's not going to stop there. And the unfortunate manner of it is the fact that what is going to happen afterwards? Who is going to have to die for this to end?
Yeah.
And in reality, it's going to be the people, the very people they were trying to defend by
Yeah.
trying to do this. It's going to be the people that, the kids, the teenagers, the young adults that are going to mainly suffer from this fact.
Yeah, because once these things get started, they don't just stop. No one just lays down and says, "Well, we're done here." It didn't happen in any of the prior wars or fought on this country or in any other country. It's never happened in prior gang violences. It doesn't just stop. It doesn't just go away. Hurt feelings and hateful words don't just disappear from our minds and memories. The kids that are watching this now are remembering this. They're remembering the insults passed to each other in class. They're remembering, your dad said this to my dad, and they're remembering this. They're watching this, and they're going to figure out that, well, these people are mean to us for whatever reason, and we are going to continue to not like each other. And that's just going to be a continuation that's going to stretch beyond just this generation if somebody doesn't just say, enough is enough. If both sides don't just agree that, for the better of the situation for the town, the community, the kids that are watching this, don't just say enough is enough, it will never be enough. Wars have lasted centuries before because people were unwilling to just say enough is enough. And it can get so blown out of proportion when it's just one thing or one person. I mean, harken back to the start of World War I. One person. It only took one person. And suddenly there was this massive, world war that seemed like it would never end at the time. Until finally, one side says, well, we've outdone you, and really, what did we do? What good did that do? In the end, you have a dead body count, a wounded soldiers count, and that's it. That's all you have to show for it.
Right. And I cannot honestly and truthfully say of a single war where anything good came out of it. I mean, look at the previous wars. Um, excuse me, Desert Storm was one of the more recent ones. Operation Iraqi Freedom, that was another one. What good has come out of that? I mean, they're still in the same situation out there as they are in now.
Yeah.
Vietnam, we did not need to get into Vietnam, and in fact, we probably made things a lot worse by being in Vietnam just because of the poisons that we used on the areas. World War II, nothing good came out of World War II in the way of what we did to other human beings. The atomic bombs, weapons of mass destruction, as George Bush so lovingly puts it every time he sees something. All these things, nothing good is coming out of them. All we're doing is we're killing each other. And the Earth does have an overpopulation right now, but that is not the way that we need to be dealing with things right now. We really need to be focusing on the fact that we're killing this planet, and we're not going to have anywhere to live soon. Our future generations are going to have nothing. And one of the things that we have to understand as well is we have nowhere else to go because we've stopped all types of outlook towards other planets. I mean, we've stopped all kinds of colonization. We've stopped pretty much everything. So we're just ruining it for other people.
And it is. It's really, honestly, it's sad when you step back and look at it, and it's like, I'm fairly sure that no parent wants to raise their kid in an environment where you have to fear stepping outside of your door, where bulletproof vests and face masks are just normal, and where, fighting for survival literally means tooth and nail fighting over bare supplies. I don't think any parent really wants to see their kid in that situation. But I think until the reality is brought to most Americans that, yeah, those pictures of starving kids in Africa could be your kids, I don't think that it's going to stop. I don't think that situations getting blown out of proportion is going to end. I think that we are so removed from the situations that we don't really grasp just how serious this is. And I'm not going to say that I'm 110% go green and I do everything right, by no means. But there is no there's not a culture of let's try to help here. There's not a culture of let's make good choices today that will actually make things better in the future. We're one of the farthest behind countries in trying to make our cities and our factories and our buildings healthier for the planet, better environments, future generations, and just overall a better standard of living. We don't have a culture that really looks at it from a standpoint of let's help our neighbors, let's help our community. We just expect the government hand to come in and scoop these people up and somehow fix them, because obviously they have to be broken if they can't make ends meet through the American dream. We have this very we've almost stereotyped ourselves in such a way that it makes us impossible to really look at the situation as an outsider and say, we are a little bit messed up, a little bit probably being extremely sarcastic. we have a lot of our flaws that unfortunately a lot of people just either don't want to see, don't care to see, won't admit are there, or they're so far removed that this is normal to them. This is normal society. And I mean, I'd love to say, everybody in America hop on the bus. We're going on a field trip to, Africa and really figuring out what it means to survive on the barren. But, obviously we don't have enough buses, and probably I don't think we could get everyone to go. But, permission slips and everything will be sent out as needed. The point being is we really do need to come to a consensus that, even though our justice system may have its flaws, if we don't try to work with it, if we don't try to let it do its job, we're just compounding the problem.
And the most unfortunate part of everything is the fact that we are, like you said, we're behind. In our civilization in America, it doesn't look like it because we have all this technology, we have all these freedoms, we have all these things that we can do. So it doesn't seem like we're underprivileged at all or under civilized. But in reality, we have to understand that the amount of freedoms and the amount of civilization that we've had so far is in fact uncivilized. We are very, very behind on where we need to be, and the fact of the matter is that we have to come together as a people in general and understand that we can't keep living like this. We can't keep just fighting one another constantly. We can't keep just saying, oh, this is your fault, or this is your fault, this is your fault. No, we're all human beings. We're all people that live in the same planet, and that's not trying to be, as they call it, a hippie way of looking at things. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is the fact that we are not going to survive forever with the way that we're currently going. And none of us want to see our grandchildren or children in the mess that we're currently in. So stop.
I don't think, right. I don't think any parent can honestly say that they want their kids to grow up and struggle, or that they want their daughters or their sons or their nephews or nieces, or even going as far down as great grandchildren. I don't want to see them suffer. But at the same time, how are you stopping it? And that's not to say that we don't try every day, we don't get up and go to work and support our kids and do what we can for them, but when you look at it from a long-term perspective rather than a short-term, rather than saying, in 10 minutes this coffee will satisfy me, thinking about in 10 years from now this plastic cup will still be sitting there in a landfill because it doesn't decompose. Or looking at it from a standpoint of, in 100 years, will there still be that ability to go grab a coffee from a store because, there's enough supplies for everybody? Or, if my lineage lives that long, will they be struggling to just get the bare amount of calories that they need to survive?
Right.
And how am I impacting that? How am I making that better? I'm not all, let's all, run around screaming kumbaya and, never have any problems, because I don't believe that a society can exist. I don't believe a relationship can even exist without its difficulties and without its struggles. It just doesn't happen. If my wife and I never fought, I don't think it'd be a real relationship. One of us would be hiding something or completely subservient to the other. I don't think it happens, but at the same time, I think that the way that you handle the situations, the way that you deal with it, the way that you teach your children to deal with it, is going to make all the difference in the world, especially for the future generations who have to look back on this. I mean, we look back now on the way that we treated, the Native Americans that have been here, for hundreds of years, practicing their own way of life, and we look back now, and we a lot of us really wish we could take that back. We really wish we could undo some of the wrongs that we've done them, or we really wish we could undo things like the Holocaust or the other, human tragedies that have happened. How are we going to look back on this? How are the people of Ferguson going to look back on the situation? How are they going to feel about it? How are they going to feel about their participation and where they stood?
I did read an article the other day about a mother that she literally moved to Ferguson because she had nowhere else to go, and she has come to love the city that she lives in. And now her child is asking what's the difference between a black person and a white person? Why are they different? To kids, they don't understand all these things. They don't understand why we should be different, or why we are different, or why it should even matter. And in reality, it shouldn't matter. Why does this matter to us? We have so many other things that should matter to us that it's just ridiculous that other things do.
Yeah, I would rather care. I would rather be the parent that's on the PTO board trying to figure out a good fundraiser for my children's school, rather than being one of the people that's running around, in an uproar, threatening and causing violence on either side. I'm not saying that it's, a one-sided confrontation here by any means. But I would rather be one of the people that's trying to make the future better, rather than one of the people that is so focused on the present that they can't see beyond it. I mean, whatever happens tomorrow or the next day when the courts do present their decision, what happens after the fact is what really matters. In the 10 minutes after the decision, I'm sure we're still going to be sitting here in, silence as we kind of reflect on the decision that's being made. In 10 hours, though, will there be violence in the street, more blood on the street? Or will people finally suggest that, maybe there's a choice here? Maybe there's a better way of handling the situation. Maybe there's a different outlook that we can pass to our kids, a different way that we can just basically give them the tools and the values and the beliefs that will help them avoid the kind of explosion that has happened.
And in reality, we do have to come to terms with what we're doing to ourselves. I mean, the majority of people nowadays are on some type of depression or psychotic medicine because they simply aren't happy with life. Do we really have a disorder, or do we have so much that we think is important to us that we don't focus on the things that actually should matter to us?
Quite true. And I mean, I ranted earlier on Facebook, and this is entirely my feelings on the subject at the time. I have run across so many posts about, either let's hate on Christmas because they're playing the Christmas carols too much, or they're commercializing it, or whatever the situation is. Let's hate Christmas. Let's avoid Christmas. Let's not let Christmas even come into our mouths until after Thanksgiving has passed. Or, let's go gung-ho and let's go buy a tree now and let's go decorate. And it's becoming this little war among some of my friends and some of the people I'm watching. And I'm just like, let's just cancel the holidays. Maybe then if we don't have them for a year, maybe we'll learn to just the fact that we each have our own way of celebrating. We each have our own holidays that we celebrate, Christmas not being the only and the best of those. We all have different preferences on our music, on our social activities, on our traditions. let's actually take the time to, accept that we're not all the same. We're not all going to go for the same stuff around this time of the year. Not everyone's favorite holiday is Christmas. Not everyone really likes to hear Christmas carols on the radio before Thanksgiving is done. That's fine. But to go at such lengths to feel as though, well, you can't do this around the holidays, or you can't say this until this, or you can't, make people work on Thanksgiving. I mean, while I may be all for some of those things or all against others, I personally feel like we have so diluted the holiday, and it's more about what we don't do and the social expectations that come with each of those holidays, and the social expectations of, how you're supposed to sing the Christmas carols and which version is best. We're so losing sight of it. And I don't even mean just the whole Christmassy spirit or the religion behind it. I just literally mean we are so bogged down in our own little wars that we just completely lose sight of, this is supposed to be the time of year where people get together for various reasons and enjoy the fact that, what, we've made it another year, and let's go at the next one with a gusto.
Right. And that's actually going to have to be something we talk about next time. We are out of time this time. I do want to say, I thank you everyone that watched our last video, and the people that are watching this one, please go back and watch that one. We discussed a lot of good things there as well. It's really important to us that you kind of join in with us on this. Comments, subscriptions, likes on the video. Even if you don't like the video, dislike it. Let us know what you want. Because of the fact this is all stuff that, as you heard tonight, this is all stuff that means something to us. So, if you like this or if you have some idea, please let us know for the sake of us getting better and giving what we believe is important to you. So
Definitely
encourage you guys to let us know more. I will have to say, for my first time playing this game, I sucked badly.
But if you enjoyed it, what's the problem if you enjoyed it?
No, I can't even begin to tell you how bad I was at this game. I'm currently having all of my people die in battle right now. But, I really want to say this is an important topic for me. I really wish we could talk about it more, and if people do want us to, we can talk about it more later on. I really, really enjoy doing this. This is the highlight of my week other than family stuff. So I really hope we can continue doing this, and one of the only ways we can is by continued support from everyone. So I do want to say that, and I want to say thank you again to everyone that has shown us that support thus far.
Absolutely. Thank you guys, not only for just watching, but if you do interact in the comments, kind of discuss things. If you want to get to know us, we'll comment, we'll post, we can discuss with you. And as always, the invitation is always out there. If you want to get in on one of the topics or choose one of the topics or even discuss with us, by all means, let us know. We can work with you as we can to try to schedule that and have the ability to hear more than just me and you.
Well, honestly, I enjoy speaking to other people. I enjoy the other opinions. You and I seem to agree on quite a bit, and I love that. But I love also having that difference of opinion. I mean,
Absolutely.
Even though I am all for peace, and I would love to see that everyone be able to, get along and enjoy each other's company, a difference of opinion is what makes humans human. I mean,
Absolutely.
it's the way that we go about things that make us different.
And we definitely want to hear, maybe what differences you have. I'm going to admit I'm a little bit removed from the situation we talked about today because I am pretty far away and I don't hear quite as much. But, by all means, if you're in Ferguson or if you're in the area and you've had the impact, by all means, let us know. Let us know how you feel about it. Even if your opinion you might feel is the unpopular one, please don't hesitate out. Fortunately, YouTube comments, you can have whatever username you want, and most people don't even know where you are. So you can feel free to be open here, and then no, hate or anything is going to come at you from either of us. We don't hate
Nope.
for anything.
No hate from us, and even like Cassie said, even if we have a difference of opinion, we would rather talk to you about the difference of opinion rather than saying, "Oh, you're stupid. That's a stupid opinion. Why would you even think of that?" No, let's talk about it. Let's be civil human beings like we all know we can be and go forward with life.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And on that note, I do want to thank you guys again for joining us. You guys have a wonderful rest of your day, evening, afternoon, whatever time it may be. And we will get with you next week.
Have a great day, everyone, and we'll see you next week.